much, folks. This is the first episode of Open Strings, and I decided to call it like that because the idea is to, unlike many other podcasts that kind of like interview you and ask you like the typical thing, life story, and it's like one by one, and they, interview kind of a biopic of each participant every week or so or month or so. I had the idea of doing something more journalistic. And one of the inspirations was you, actually, Fabio, because you had this radio program way back in the day. So I have one of the original podcasters and influencers of the guitar here. So none of you need introductions. But yeah, the idea is for anyone who listens to this, that we get together about once a month and just have a very open discussion on what's up with the guitar in the classical music world and not, right? So my name is Alvaro Mendizabal, and I have known these folks for quite some time from my past as both guitarist and artist manager, living in New York and in Europe. And yeah, so I'm thrilled to be doing this, actually, and that you both agreed to do this kind of, and let's try it out, right? And I don't know how long we can keep it up, but it would be fun to just chat about things and topics that I know interest you both. So I guess the first question for each of you is like, why do this to yourself? Why accept having this conversation with me, right?
You first, I first.
Yeah, anyway, like jump in. Yeah.
Fabio.
Okay, me. I just think, we have to try and develop new modes of communicating with people. I mean, I realize that many more people are just interested in listening to podcasts than a proper reading an interview or buying a book or anything like that. And because usually podcasts, they have enough time for you to express your ideas and oppose ideas to each other. It's nicer than the kind of 5-minute slot that you would have in an interview or something. So I just think it's a good way of disseminating ideas. And I'm a bit fed up with exactly what you said. No, just, so and so started to play the guitar at 4 and gave his first concert at 6. I mean, everybody's pretty much the same in a way. So at least you can discuss about ideas of music, not just about, if you play rest stroke or free stroke.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's probably pretty much the same, but I say it's more something I don't really do for the other, but for me, it's interesting to, to talk with you guys. I mean, usually I talk with about music, about guitar with close friends, but when I'm touring, blah, 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 usually we talk about everything except that because we have our stuff. So for me, it's just a personal experience and it's interesting, I guess.
Awesome, folks. So yeah, I mean, I and that's the point, right? Like Open Strings, why? Because the idea is to be very frank. I think we're gonna agree on stuff, disagree on stuff, and banning any F-bombs or anything. The idea is to just like simply upload this stuff up there, like of course edit, anything that can get us censored, but just have people kind of, see our take in different topics. And I think we had selected 3 different topics for today. And the first is for me to really, really congratulate you both. And it's been a very momentous thing in the last 2 months or so. And you know what I'm talking about. The guitar seems to be back. Each of you in the last year have had a student very close to you sign for a major recording label. And that is rare enough. It's like a comet happened twice in a year. It's super, super rare enough that is a guitarist, but like 2 in the same year, and technically for the same company, right? Because Universal owns both Decca and Deutsche Grammophon. So first, congrats. Super excited for both Plinio and Rafael, and very well deserved, I think. But first thing first, like and I heard this from you folks, right? As you posted it, and of course you must have heard definitely heard it much earlier than myself. But to the extent that you can share, like, how was it? What do you think when they got signed?
I'll just give the word to Judicael first, because I came first in the previous question.
Okay. Yes. You mean how this happened? That was the question. I'm not sure I understand properly.
Nah, like your reaction.
My reaction. Actually, it was funny because I didn't have a strong reaction because I knew this from the beginning of the process. Basically, the thing is, Raphael, just before his lesson, received an email on his spam from the artistic director from Deutsche Grammophon saying, "Oh, I would like to do something with you. I heard one of your video by chance, and I would like to do something with you." And actually, when Raphael came for the lesson, he was kind of thinking that it could be a scam. So we checked the name and we saw that it was a real person. So, and after that, he wrote to this person. He wrote back 1 month after because it was on the junk mail during 1 month. And that's how. So I was myself not so sure at the beginning that it was true because it was a little bit weird. And after that, I learned more or less at the same time than him, step by step, that it was for sure. So it means that the reaction wasn't like this because it was step by step, you know?
Yeah, and they even share this. Like, I was so surprised. Like, you know how sometimes I'm going to share my screen so that folks can see. Yeah, in the press release, Angelica Meissner, who's someone I actually don't know. I used to know a different artistic director there, but like, she literally says, and I'm quoting, where is it? It's right here. Let me see. It's been part of my life. I was completely mesmerized, but so Deutsche Grammophon's senior director of classical artists and repertoire, Angelica Meissner, discovered the young guitarist online in September 2020. The world was very particular at the time. So, and they captivated by the video of his winning GFA competition, and this is probably the biggest advertisement the GFA ever got, reached out and said, "I was completely mesmerized by the subtlety and originality of his playing." And she narrates the story that you're saying, right? Like, I couldn't find an email address, so she sent him a message in social media. I mean, this just doesn't happen, right? I mean, it's a dynamic that the industry got in, and I think we can all comment as to why, right? But you know what? I'll take it. I am freaking excited, and thinking of like how arbitrary sometimes these things are. I'm just super excited that it was someone that can play the guitar like amazingly well and has a unique voice to say. So wow, I mean, but this it sounds like it's been like, well, it has been 2 years in the making, right? So and it just got announced now. Like, why was that, right? Because sometimes these things happen faster. Do you happen to know, Judica?
Don't remember. I guess it's because it was step by step. After that, they have to decide of the program. After that, they had to do the videos and everything. So I guess it was because of that. And basically, just record the CD last week. So yeah, it took it was quite long, maybe also because of the COVID, I guess. Probably it kind of made the stuff a little bit longer. But it's funny because from the beginning it was more or less this schedule that was planned. So I don't know the reason, but it took some time. Yeah.
And for me, it's amazing, right? Because then, like, earlier in the year, right? And it sounds like this must have happened a little bit later or after they contacted Rafael, right? Because in the case of Plinio, like moving on to kind of Plinio now, how long, if you can share, right, Fabio, like how did that happen? Because it's rare enough that a label that already has a guitarist, bear in mind, right? Milos was already in Decca at this point. So his latest album of Milos, I think, was released in 2021 or right about that time, 2020. So it's rare enough that they've looked for one guitarist you know, less too, right? So how, when around was it, if you could share like kind of like the background of all of this?
It has been pretty much in the make for 2 years as well. I mean, in the case of Plinio, I have the feeling that Universal, under the aegis of Decca, has been looking for new artists, and they are looking for a different profile of artists. In the case of Raphael, of course, I mean, he's a multiple prize winner. He's had, his GFA tour, so he's an experienced concert performer already. Plinio was pretty much out of school. I mean, and Plinio, I've known him since he was 12 or something, and he was my student from 15 on. And he's not the sort of person who would go through the previsible path of giving concerts in guitar festivals and winning competitions. I mean, that is simply not who he is. He was thinking of doing that, or sort of forcing his nature to have a start of a career. But what happened essentially was he started to play a lot of chamber music still at school at the Royal Academy of Music. And one of his partners was Sheku Kani-Mason, the noted cello player, British cello player of African origin. And they played a lot together because Plinio plays the guitar, and Sheku goes a lot to the TV. And many times the TV studio doesn't have a piano, so Plinio would just give support to him. And one of the tracks that he recorded in Sheku's disc was very successful in social media. And but Plinio was really asking himself, well, that is very fine. I'm having a lot of fun playing with my best friend and blah, blah, blah. But what about myself as a solo guitarist? What should I do? And then he got the invitation pretty much the same way. He got an email or phone message. Oh, this is the artistic director of Decca USA, and we like your work and the way you play and your public persona and the way you behave and blah, blah. So it was not just, of course, the artistic thing of playing the guitar well, which he does, of course, and extremely well. But the fact that he's got, this personality that is captivating. I mean, he is a quiet guy, but he's one of the most popular students at the Royal Academy of Music. I mean, and this is something that you cannot really teach, can you? And that belongs to him. And those were the two reasons he was invited. And it was pretty much the same. They said, well, we want to make a kind of long-term project. You want to do several recordings, but has to be very well planned. So they plan, the whole sequence of recording, making the videos, making a documentary, putting snippets of his work in the social media, inviting the right guests, and deciding the repertoire and commissioning the arrangements was a basic thing. Was very, very hard work, and it took a lot of maturity from his part to decide upon that. And I think he made a good CD, and I think the ultimate, how can I say, test for it is, do people really like and buy it? And he went to the top of Billboard. So what can you tell? It is a great work.
No, I mean, it's a very interesting, because it's two artists, same instrument, very, very different kind of positioning, right? So when you're thinking of like the label itself, it's two different labels within the same company, right? But even the management, right? Like I was looking at the management of Raphael here in Germany, and it looks like this is just basically for Germany. But they have like Albrecht Meyer, who's like the principal oboist for the Berliner Philharmoniker. People like Johannes Moser, who used to be an IMG artist. Actually, I know the guy relatively well. And it's kind of like a small Evgenia Rubinova, who's been around, player, but also very kind of like a classical track. And just so delighted, to see so many guitarists now in this type of agencies. And you compare that to like harmonic artists where like Plinio is at, and it's like, Lang Lang right there. There's like probably kind of, more contemporary conductor composers, and like it's definitely much more crossover-ish, and but still very, very much, high quality. I think the track that I personally like the most in that album is the one he did with Maria Rita. That thing is I must have heard that like 50 times, man. Like
I'm
it was
glad.
really, really nice.
And that was a difficult decision because when they said they wanted a pop singer to make one of the tracks, well, we came with a short list of 20 names, including proper lyrical singers. I mean, we have some, including Brazilian opera singers who are up and coming and starting to get international exposure. And they settled for Maria Rita, who is the daughter of Elis Regina. I don't know if that is a good thing or a burden for her, but for everybody here in Brazil, she's still, the daughter of so and so. And I find the track is absolutely enchanting. I really love it too.
It was what's his name? Not Douglas, but Joao Luis. No, Joao Luis did the arrangement. No, that's fantastic.
I think he's got arrangements from 4 or 5 different people. Most of them were from João Luis and Sergio.
And Sergio, no. So, folks, I mean, I started working in this industry 12 years ago, right? And back then we had Manuel on his way out, really, because he went from Cami into like a niche agency, and then from that niche agency, kind of just to work, on his own, Manuel Barrueco. And then there was the Asats. In Cami, they had Sharon Espin and Pepe Romero. And that was it. So we had like 4/5 guys out there with this kind of representation. And now we have basically doubled. So we have Asats. I actually listed it down here. It's kind of great that we have the Asats, Pepe, and Sharon still, more or less, because Cami kind of like got broken down. But then you have Milos since 2011, Pablo since 2015, Thibaut Garcia, both Thibauts actually, like Thibaut and Thibaut Coban is in Sony still, more on the crossover side. And now all of a sudden we have, like, in the last year and a half, Sean Scheib in Harrison Parrott, also with one of the major agents in the world, based in London, and these two folks. So what does this mean? Like, what do you expect? Like, what are you thinking of seeing in the next 10 years for the very top guitarists playing at this stage, in these stages, with this kind of representation? Yep. What are your reactions? Like, what do you expect?
I don't know if I should answer first, because I don't know. That's the thing. I really have no idea. I don't know exactly about what's going to happen with classical. I don't really know. I just know that probably by itself, the main thing now will be probably the agency more than the CD company somehow, because the CD are not sold anymore. So this is the streaming. But I guess even in the CD company, they don't really know exactly what's going on. I know they try to find an economic way to deal with this new situation. So of course, I don't have any answer about that. And I guess for the concert, there is France, Europe, Western Europe, Western US and Canada, and the rest of the world. In those countries in Europe, the tendency is to decrease, but there are more countries involved with classical. So I don't really know how big is the new country in comparing that the decreasement of Europe and the US. So I don't have a general point of view with all the world. I don't know.
But I guess the hope here would be that they, number one, stay as long as they can, right? Like that's why it was so important for me to kind of look and see, okay, did they have good representation? Those are kind of like the main kind of pillars that I've seen work for artists. Because having the label is one leg of a 3-leg kind of monster that you need to build. You need kind of the representation. You need meaning the management. You need the label, and then you kind of need the PR, like to sprinkle news and like get you in the cover of the magazines and all that stuff. And and that definitely, it helps if you have like the right kind of personality and if you're in the right place. So I guess for what you guys have shared now, right? It sounds like lesson for like really ambitious guitarists that want to go in this direction, and it's definitely not the only direction to go, but starting in the right place doesn't hurt, right? Hanging out with like the cellist that played in the royal wedding for Meghan and the Prince of Wales doesn't hurt, right? And it gets your foot in the door, right? And also, interestingly enough, and I think the GFA honestly could have done much. I know they posted it and things like that, but like, I mean, this is a GFA winner now records for Deutsche Grammophon, right? That is absolutely fantastic, and it's finally paying off, right? Because like for my generation, and we've seen, and I've talked about this with each of you countless of times in person, in Facebook and things. So we have kind of like 20 good years of amazing guitarists that did not surf that right wave, right? And it sounds like together with Plinio and Rafael and Sean Scheib, who's also doing really wonderful, right? He plays in Whitmore Hall every other week, I think.
Yes. And you still have Shu Fei Yang.
Exactly, she's still around. Right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So we now even have 11. That's right. God. Yeah, and that was kind of like the first of this kind of generation that was there. But that was because kind of John Williams appointed her. No, it was he was in Ascona's Hold, and he was like, "Yep, there we go. I passed the baton. There you go." And she was also based in London as well. So it's super interesting. Rafael is really an outlier. Well, and Thibaut Garcia as well to a certain degree. But Thibaut's happened also. For what I understand is also because Warner is now close to France, right? And his manager is based in France, and he's a former record label producer that became an agent, and then he happened to meet him, and then like he already had all the connections as a record producer to get him signed. And he's also doing some wonderful stuff with Jarowski and all these people. So it sounds like there's kind of like a renaissance, right? And I really, really, really hope that we get to see multiple albums, really interesting repertoire. I know they will be the case. Probably you cannot share, Judicael, what he's gonna record, right? But they announced it would be like some Bach and Couperin, which you already.
I can say precisely. There's no secret. He records some Bachs of the first keyboard partita, transcription by mostly Reichenbach, a lot of Couperin, a lot of Rameau, a lot of Dufaux, a lot of even some not so famous French Baroque. So it's Bach and French Baroque basically.
Wow,
just that. And most of the transcription are new, done by a guy named Antoine Fougeret. It's one of my best friends and former student, and they work in the same school together. Now they teach in the same school. And yes, so it will be Bach and French Baroque.
Go for it.
Yeah, the only piece they asked him was the first prelude of the Well-Tempered Clavier, but all the rest is totally his choice. So it's not very necessary, very common. There were some pieces that by Antoine Forqueret that I even don't know. I didn't know the piece. So it's a very personal album.
That's wonderful. And so the entire partita, you said, the Reichenbach arrangement.
Yeah.
That's awesome. 825, right? I think it's something like that.
Yes, 820 something.
Yeah, wow. That's awesome. Antoine Fougeret, I'm destroying their, like, I cannot do French, but that's the guy that did the transcription of the some transcriptions that you also did, no? I think it's that him and Manukian, not Tristan
Yeah,
Manukian.
yeah. They're two of my very good friends, and they do some transcriptions for themselves, for me, for anybody, and for Raphael.
That's all. Like, so when they publish it, my suggestion is they say like you should buy an extra pinky finger, no? So you, because it's insane. Like you practice at your own risk, folks. I mean this is stuff that only Judicael can do in his living room. After you've heard all of those CDs you have in the back, that's amazing, man. I mean, I'm really congratulations again. It must feel so great. You know, I know you're a big record collector, as you can see, and you too, Fabio, right? So now you have now you'll have a record with your with the yellow label and your student, man. That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Cool.
No,
I'm glad to see that there will be probably no overlap with Plinio's projects.
Exactly.
That's a good thing. So I cannot disclose. Apparently, the next album they want to be an orchestral thing, a concerto recording or something. And there is a big discussion about that because, as you see, Plinio's album, he recorded Villa-Lobos 5 Preludes. Well, we know it's not a world premiere, but it's a fine recording. I mean, it makes justice to the Decca sound and everything. And most of the rest of the album is new arrangements. But, I mean, there's the girl from Ipanema, and the Plinio was a bit itchy about that. He said, well, such an old war horse, why should I do this thing? It's a new Sergio Assad arrangement, it's all right. But apparently, in streaming, the most often heard track is Villa-Lobos Prelude number 5.
Really?
So he got ahead of all the pop music arrangements. So that is a nice tool that he's got in his hands. When they say, oh, we have to make an arrangement of Stairway to Heaven or something, he said, he can say, look, you know, the most successful track in the first album was exactly the most classical track of all.
And this is what I'm saying. I mean, I've been screaming to this to like major section leaders of the Berliner Philharmoniker, to my former manager, to everybody, like, why insist in the path of making the classical 400-year-old instrument play modern music when you can grab the modern instrument that people like and make it play Bach, right? Like use us as a gateway drug to, you know, good music, right? And that's exactly what's been taught in conservatories, et cetera. I mean, I want to talk about education and things like this in a minute, so we can transition to that. But it's precisely that. I think the guitar, the industry finally is realizing that, like, let's give people something that they're already related to, and then you can stretch what you offer to them, right? Not just like send them sugar-coated classical music with violin and whatnot. I think overall, and I am happy that this thesis kind of is proving true, that you kind of need the popular acts to almost subsidize an open wave for an album like Raphael's to exist. And I think that work was done fairly well by first Milos, then to some degree Pablo, and now like Sean Scheib is going into more like modern music and using electric guitar as a classical instrument. Is super interesting. I don't know if you guys heard that.
Sean is much more experimentally oriented.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you hear that, Judicael? Like his entire album is electric guitar, but he records Hildegard von Bingen on electric guitar.
Wow, okay, I didn't know.
It's freaking cool. Yeah, check it out. Yeah, and the cover is, I'm not going to comment on the cover. It's unbelievable. Like that's the best adjective we can say. Oh my God. All right. Look, you guys mentioned so best wishes and best of luck, and to both Plinio and Raphael. Super excited to see what they will do. You guys kind of alluded, and this all happened during the pandemic, and Judicael, I've seen you in Koblenz earlier. I haven't seen you too long, Fabio. Like we need to hang out.
That's
next
right.
time you.
Yeah, because I went to Koblenz last year, but you weren't there. So.
Exactly. And so, but I know that each of you have gone to different concerts, and like you're starting to do concerts now. There's the festival scene is kind of back. I kind of wanted to get your take, because you definitely go, like Koblenz this year was my first festival in 5 years, right? And of course it's unfair because it's right after COVID. And there were still kind of some restrictions in Germany, very, very, very conservative country in that realm. But you guys have been around. Impressions, how has the scene changed? Like how have you seen, like, number of people, fees? I mean, I'm not going to tell you to tell me to the cents and dollars, but like,
Okay.
right? How has it changed?
Well, I'm not so much into this guitar festival scene. I mean, I play a few, but it's not my main activity. But what I've seen pretty much everywhere is that, how can I put it? I'm naturally a kind of skeptical guy, and that's for the good, really, because everybody was saying, "Oh, look, everybody will be so crazy to watch concerts after the COVID restrictions, blah, blah, blah." And that is exactly the opposite. Everywhere I go, you have less audiences than you had before. I wouldn't say that everything is pretty empty. It's not empty, but I think that people are much more cautious to go out and have sort of rediscovered the pleasures of being at home and listening to whatever you like and stopping whenever you like.
How was campus? How was campus? You're still involved there, no?
I am. It was pretty good. I mean, it all comes to economics, Alvaro. You know, the concerts that are for free or have lower prices, they are always full. The problem is to fill the ones that you need a proper box office to put together. So guest orchestras, expensive soloists, is becoming a kind of no-go thing. Now I'm talking as the person who is on the other side of the table, because the economics of bringing a big name has become a bit prohibitive for us. I also
just for the folks listening to this, like, let me give you like a 30-second. Campus You're Down, probably it's the Tanglewood of Latin America. Is like, last time I was there, you are the greatest host in the world. We went to see a concert, a Mozart horn concerto with the principal French horn player of the Berliner Philharmoniker, who was giving master classes there. And for many, many years, there's been a guitar class there. So if you happen to be around Latin America, Brazilian guitarists know this, but it's an amazing festival, and it's one of the largest in terms of budget as well. No, I mean,
certainly Latin America, comparing to the big festivals
in Latin
Europe,
America,
course,
yeah.
But still, we have something like 120 concerts in a month, and we bring 8 or 10 guest orchestras and major soloists and everything. And on the top of that, we have a summer school that, in the case of Brazil, is a winter school.
So challenging, eh? Judy, how have you felt it? Like,
I mean, pretty much the same thing. There are less people in the Philharmonic. I mean, for the same concerts that before, I talk about really big name, like, I don't know, Sokolov, whatever, there are less people. That's for sure. And I've talked with a student who work in the Philharmonie and tells me that there's some concerts with not so many people.
La Philharmonie de Paris.
Yeah, well, so less people. For the guitar festival, I guess it really depends. When it's a very small event in a specific place, it can be pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. But somehow when it's bigger, it's more difficult. And in France, you know, the movie industry is quite important in France, and they suffer like they have never suffered so much. Even after the COVID, I mean. So there's a difference. So I have no idea if it will recover, but the thing that makes me feeling a little bit worried is, for example, when I was in US, when I used to teach in San Francisco, I've heard a lot of people who were pretty satisfied with the idea of not taking the car and see the concert in streaming. A lot of people comment that. So I don't know when I played 2 weeks ago in Amsterdam, and it was pretty much the same than before. I mean, the same because it was full, but less people for sure. I mean, it's not my opinion; it's what people say, and it's statistic. It's not just a feeling.
Have you guys heard or seen some festivals going under, like just disappearing, not coming back after COVID, something like that? Places where you used to go.
Yeah, a few.
Oh, man. But mostly in Europe or in the US, or kind of combined, or
in Europe, I guess. I've seen some stuff that won't happen, or they did 1 year, 1 year half, and finally now they can do it, and they still don't do it. So, yeah.
I can only tell for Brazil, I mean, for general music festival, guitar festival, there are not any longer. But we have two big guitar concert series in São Paulo, and they've been very full, actually.
Yeah, like the Cultura Artística, you know, like Aguirre played there a couple of months ago, and you know, Marcelo.
Anabel Montesinos will be there next week, and it's sold out.
Oh, nice, great. But what do you mean that there's no, so the Seski and like the other festivals and stuff like that, that doesn't happen anymore?
Yeah, that doesn't happen any longer because they were supposed to be short-lived anyway.
Got it.
They were kind of one-off. But music festivals, they've managed to keep together, but as long as they are educational events. If you have, you know, orchestral practice, good teachers coming from abroad, you bring the students, and they are, if they're not on stage, they are watching the concert. So one thing feeds the other. And of course, there's a lot of government money in all these events, so it sort of saves the day. If there were private events, probably wouldn't be so good. But I'm talking about a very specific country that doesn't really apply to everything. You asked about fees and everything. I don't want to give the impression that I'm sneaking out of the question. No. To be honest, they've gone down mostly.
Seriously?
Because many people have played for less or for nothing during the live streamings and online concerts and everything. So generally, I've received offers that were pretty much the same or less than before. So
I guess if you account for inflation, you're getting paid like what, 15% less or something like that, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's crazy.
I have triple now.
Oh my God! But have you seen that as well, Judicael? Like in the festivals in general, have they asked you?
I would have to compare with the same festival to be sure. I mean, let's say that sometimes instead of doing one concert, we had to give 2 concerts because it was half, half audience or something like this. But I didn't really notice that. I mean, for sure, I wouldn't be sure that it followed the inflation, that it's much higher than before. So let's say yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have been hit really bad, Fabio. Like the euro is now under the dollar. I never thought that I would live to see that, but oh my God, yeah. So
I know.
The pound got there so close, right?
For me, that's a disaster.
Oh my God. Oh, okay. I mean, it's not a surprise. The street is getting harder, right? There was a huge kind of overvaluation in the economy was like overinflated. The stock market has been very interesting, as I comment always with my good friend Tal Hurwitz here. I was just telling Judicael, Fabio, that in Berlin we have a nice little crew. Actually, you know Tal Hurwitz, and he actually lives fairly close to my house, and we hang out fairly often. So whenever you guys come, it would be lovely to have something decent, like a nice series in Berlin, right? Because it's one of the capitals of music world, right? And we have honestly not much. It's I've been here 2 years.
Guitar has never quite happened there, in spite of the fact there's some very good guitarists living there. So.
Yeah, no, it's odd. It's odd. It's really odd. I guess it's because there's so many concerts, so many. I would only compare it to New York. I've never lived in Paris, but it's I don't know how much more can you put in a season, and in number of concert halls and stuff like that. I mean, Paris has a lot, right, as well, but definitely it's right up there with London, with New York, with some of these
London has
cities.
gone down. I mean, compared to the 90s, nowadays London is a much less interesting place.
Wow. Yeah, because back then you guys had South Bank Center much more active, I guess, and like,
Well,
yeah.
South Bank Center is a long story, but it's not what it used to be. And
Yeah.
also the Barbican. For every classical concert you have I don't know, 3 or 4 pop concerts. So
Yeah, it's like that. Hauser, two cellos, right? And Pablo is actually just recorded this TV show, this kind of like American Idol style thing with Hauser, and which will air in Croatia, I think. So
all right.
yeah,
I've seen a video of them playing together.
Yeah,
Well,
trying to
good
get in the
exposure.
action. Oh my God. But okay, last topic for the week. I wanted to talk about this, and there's no way we're gonna tackle this in like 10, 15 minutes. But okay, great news. There's more guitarists at the very, very top of things, right? At least in the classical music, what I think I would consider to be kind of as a classical musician, pretty much the top of where you're gonna get Decca, Deutsche Grammophon, and then we'll see those concerts happen, right? But the street for the rest of mortals, right, is getting tougher, right? So now comes the topic of like, guitar education, and this will be like an ongoing topic in this podcast, I think, because there's so many angles to play, right? Like, Judicael, I know you've collaborated with the likes of Tone Bass. You have had an incredibly eclectic career of different conservatories in America, in Europe. Fabio, you teach also bicontinentally, I guess. So, how do you see the profession now, right, for someone that would join your class, right? And now bachelors, and they have like their entire 20s ahead of them, right? Like, how have you seen the education world in the guitar when now you have alternatives in both free and paid, like Tone Bass or like Guitar by Masters, or like just YouTube, right? To learn the instrument. Like, if at the end what you want to do is just play well, like, do you need a degree? Like, is it worth it? Like, and it's a big topic, right? So, but let's start there, right?
I don't know, because there's two things. I mean, much more than two things, but I had my experience in US and in Europe. Let's say that in Europe, England is a little bit different, but the rest of Europe is pretty similar. And US, it's also something else. It's kind of complex, because the situation for the student really depends a lot with the same kind of talent in which country they come from. I mean, some, they will stay in Europe, or they will try to stay in US, or more likely in Europe if they study in Europe, and some would get back in their country. So, I mean, for example, typically, I remember I had one student who was from Thailand, and just having a diploma in San Francisco was probably enough for him to have a job in university, because they have probably less guitarists. In France, for example, I was teaching in a kind of local conservatory some years ago, and from this conservatory, I think at this time it was 3 students who won GFA, and they didn't care at all, because they really didn't know what it was, and it wasn't really any kind of help for them. It was just nothing. So it really depends of where you live, and each country has different type of opportunities.
Right. I mean, for in that situation, I think most of your students ended up winning DFA and studying with you in Aulnay-sous-Bois, but they were also students in the Conservatoire de Paris, no? Most of them.
It was the case, but they were not helped by that. They were helped by nothing, basically. Actually, it was when I was in San Francisco, it was kind of the opposite. When I had like few students who win competition, they would make a lot of advertisement or whatever. But before, I mean, even for example, Thibaut Garcia, somehow his opportunity to record by a nice label, a big label, Warner, wasn't linked at all from his school. He didn't have really specific support because it's not totally mainstream. So you know that. I mean, if you talk with other musicians, they won't know typically GFA, you know. Now, for example, I am in Geneva. And in Geneva, they have this Geneva competition for each instrument each year. They didn't do the guitar for a very long time. I hope they will do it again. I mean, at least I try to talk with them. But except that it's a separate market somehow. Yeah. And this is why there are so few guitarists, and now there are more, you say 10 or 11 or whatever. So in terms of economical opportunity and job opportunity, it's very difficult to find really a route because it depends on where they live, what they want to do, and how lucky they are, because the luck is also very important.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, that in everything, right? Like in everything in life, right?
I mean, I mean, let's say that, of course, luck is for everything, but probably less in, for example, if you win, if you have one of the first 10th prize actually in Chopin competition, I mean, you will do something, except if you have some kind of personal problem or disease or whatever, which can happen time to time, you know. Same thing with Tchaikovsky, same thing with. So let's say that it's probably less luck. I mean, there's still the luck of the competition, but you have some stuff automatically. I mean, for Raphael, they didn't arrive to him because of GFA. They found the video from GFA apparently, but there were no link. I mean, GFA is Naxos in terms of CD,
exactly,
which is totally different. So it's very difficult again to predict, to give advices. It's not so easy. I mean, I know some, and this is why also I feel more comfortable in Europe. It's because I know much more about what are the possibilities. In US, it's very difficult because there are so few jobs and it works a little bit differently. So I stayed 3 years and I was feeling probably less useful for that.
And it's extremely expensive, no?
And it's expensive, and the price.
So like the return on investment there, it's kind of like what you kind of want, right? Like even the Conservatoire de Paris, for instance, like how
it's free.
It's
500-600 something like this per year, and in Geneva it's 900.
Yeah. Wow. And Fabio, I mean, in Royal Academy. In Royal Academy, like I remember, wasn't it Plinio that did kind of like a GoFundMe or like some sort of like social kind of crowdsourcing to make it to?
No,
it was not him.
No, Plinio was extremely lucky in the sense that he managed to get a Brazilian government grant, one that never went to anybody doing the arts or humanity. It's only by chance. It was totally by chance that he got that scholarship, but he had all 4 years paid for.
Wow.
And then when he did his postgrad, he had a very rich student who paid for him.
Wow. And that's the magic. Like, this is the kind of stuff that I think people don't talk enough in the festivals and stuff like that. Like, I also file my nails. I love, like to discuss about micromesh and stuff like that. But folks, like, places like Curtis, places like Royal Academy of Music, like when you read the bios of so many people like Milos, I think in the first biography that he had, I think he listed how he got his moment from a donor, and then there's like this kind of network of donors, because at the end of the day, that is the tradition of classical music, finding the rich person.
That's tradition, especially in England, isn't it?
Exactly.
Which I find it's too expensive. Well, all American universities are too expensive. If anybody asks my advice, I would say, well, where should I study? Well, study where you get a scholarship. I mean, it's simply not worth starting a career with a debt of, I don't know, a couple of $100,000 or something. I mean, you will never recoup that.
It's hard enough, right? And that's the thing in the art. I was extremely lucky to go to a place like Arizona, where like Tom Patterson, if Tom ever watches this, hi man, he literally did the life of so many people, because he's a fundraising machine. Like it's impressive, actually. He's one of the best funded programs, I think, in the States. And if not, it would have been very, very difficult. You know, like your student Thibaut, no, Thomas Piloteau also studied there. No, like after, some years after. So it's a very, very different model. No, and sometimes people, I think, for the affinity to the professor, or like because they really like certain thing that they saw in a festival and stuff like that, they get into some not very wise financial decisions with their education, and then it's a hole, right? That you're trying to avoid. I personally think that the return on investment on the top 5 to 10 programs in the world, and it's very difficult to judge as to what that is. And you know, in guitaristic terms, so to say, it might be different than in the popular terms. But if you go to the likes of, and I'm not sponsoring any particular professor here, but in general, in classical music world, Conservatoire de Paris, Juilliard, you know, Curtis, etc., they give you some Royal Academy of Music. They give you a sort of credential, right? That you can then use to attach your name to something, and then go and like find an in, right? Like to get your foot on the door, right? And yeah, I mean, and then you can go and do the master classes you want. I mean, and get better, but either the label or the name of your conservatory or something like that has to appear in your resume, because at the end of the day, your resume, something in there has to resonate to someone who has no idea about the guitar at all, right? So it's but it's tricky, because it's getting harder and harder to pay for it many times, you know? And now an entire generation is starting to, we were just talking about that right before this, right? Like an entire generation is starting to retire, right? Marco just got the position here in Berlin in UDK. It's like one of the major, the most important ones. There's been some changes in Paris. Judy, you got Geneva. Like this generational change, what do you guys think? It's is it going to be more of the same, or are you expecting something from this generational change, you know, that will happen in the next 5 years?
There's a lot of change. I really do expect, I hope to have a lot of change. I think classical music has to arrive to the 21st century yet, in the sense of learning, to having a wider scope of learning. What I see for people like Pliny or even Millers, or even people who don't go to that kind of major contract label and management and everything, but you have to learn, of course, to have that kind of, how can I say, archaeological interest of keeping the tradition of classical music. That is absolutely important to preserve and to keep always anew. It's our mission to a certain extent to be able to keep that kind of music alive, and which is so important, and has been so important for me, and I hope it's important for other people as well. But you cannot just restrict yourself to that. I mean, just, you know, last year when I did Campus do Jordão Festival, I decided to have a piece by a woman composer. Every concert that had students taking part. So we are talking about some 45 concerts where I tried to include a piece by a woman composer. Except for two composers, one named Schumann and the other Mendelssohn, they couldn't really tell the name of any other woman composer.
Wow.
I mean, that is a scandal. That is something that is so wrong about the education. And you could tell the same, about Latin American composers or Afro-descendant composers, or I mean, and then when it comes to learning, you have that kind of curriculum that I'm absolutely not against. I think that we should keep that, but we have that curriculum that we have to learn, that sequence of pieces and play the exams and blah blah blah, and we don't learn other styles, other means of learning. So just to have a very quick example, imagine that you are playing Baroque music, Baroque dances, and you are studying all the old treatises to understand how they were played and what was the kind of swing that you have to give to the music. But the thing is, if you go to Africa or to certain countries in Latin America, those dances are living things. And they are learned by route. People dance to them and they learn how to play just by looking at each other. Why this kind of informal way of learning things is not part, even a minor part, of the academic curriculum? So only things that you learn by a method have value. We have to revise that. You cannot have a university, let's say in Brazil or Australia or the United States, where you never have a guy who plays blues guitar telling people how he learned and what you can do with the expression of music. We have to be more accepting.
And many times at the end, you end up playing that kind of music more than what you studied in your university. Simon Powys graduated with a master in music in Yale University, and I remember he still has a band where he plays banjo in New York, and at the same time he has his guitar review thing, and I've collaborated with him, throughout the years in the past. But it's interesting, a lot of the gigs will be in other stuff, right? Judicael, what do you think? In Europe, do you see this generational change kind of change the approach somehow as well? In Berlin, I can tell you the answer is kind of no, because Marco is going to come here with his method, right? And very much classical centric, but in other places that you guys have seen within Europe.
I think it doesn't change at all. Just for some reason, lately, I had many students who are doing two instruments, guitar and something else, at the same level than the guitar. Guitar is super high level, and the other instrument at very high level.
What instruments?
I have one girl, young girl. She's in Geneva. She's doing guitar and clarinet, same level.
No.
One guy who finished Paris Conservatory some years ago, but he's now just with me. He's 21. He's doing guitar and euphonium. He's in Paris Conservatory in euphonium also, just finishing Paris Conservatory in euphonium. And I had one student who was doing flute and guitar at the same time, same level. And there is one also very good guitarist, and now she's touring a lot as a traverso player. So I had for some reason I had lately 5 students who play 2 instruments, but both instruments are classical. And let's say that the way they learn both instruments are probably the same than 20 years or 30 years ago. So I can't say there is some specific changes. And I think it's pretty much the same. Even
Question, did those students start with the other instrument afterwards, or did they kind of no?
No, usually they start by the guitar first. And the thing that makes me feeling good is they all say that guitar is more difficult. But
they're right.
But I can trust them because they play both instruments at the same level.
Okay, so you both don't know this about me, but I played the flute in the National Youth Symphony in Peru. And I also have the same level in guitar and flute. I suck at both. So right. So no. But it is very interesting. And before, for instance, you didn't. That would be very interesting to see what drove them. Was it purely musical thing, or because I also have a friend who has just started to learn cello. He's or just amateur, like literally one scale and stuff like that, right? But there's this kind of I don't know what that says really. Is it because you are trying to capture more of your creative process, or is it easier, I guess, to do both now? Because certainly for you, Judicael, it's not something you had encountered before, no? Like
No.
you didn't know too many people that had done that before, I guess.
No, I didn't know, or at least not really at this level.
And do they tell you, for instance, will they want to decide, like, or do you think they'll keep on kind of playing concert with guitar? I guess the guitar and flute person can record a single album, right? Like different, right?
The thing is, for most of the other instruments, it's easier to get concerts. If you do the chamber music, they are really good. So they usually, I mean, so far, a lot of them, the carrier choose for them.
Yeah.
I hope they don't have to decide. And I think it's a generation thing, Judy. I see many people in the early 20s who are doing two careers. They're going to music and doing, let's say, business or law or
Wow.
yeah. So you can have a kind of safety net at a certain point. And not only that, I mean, there's nothing that prevents someone from liking music and liking
something else,
another area of knowledge. I mean, I hope that there is enough time in life to do both.
That's what I would like to believe. Yeah, but at the same time, right? Like you also kind of want the very very good ones to go down that path and be able to push the instrument forward, right? And that can only kind of come with really just doing that, like over specializing at something, and hopefully there's enough market for that to happen, right? Like many times I had this conversation with friends. It's like, why don't we have a different opinions, right? But like I don't believe we have a Barenboim yet. And I'm a musician of the level of Barenboim in the guitar. And maybe why is that? Like, well, I don't know, man. Like when you play for Furtwängler when you're 9, right? And you play all the Beethoven sonatas when you're 15, and then right, but it's almost like that path is charted for, and there's enough. The industry is big enough to subsidize or to allow for that to happen. And many times what I see is like you said, like and this is public information, right? Like Andrei Lebedev, right? Who Royal Academy of Music, right? Or Royal College? Royal Academy, no?
Yeah.
He's working in Goldman Sachs, investment banker, right? Probably sleeping 2 hours a night.
Well,
right?
That is notorious.
But it's a decision, and I know I've gone a similar path. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll find an answer tonight, but it's a really interesting topic to continue to chat about, because it's so many things, right? Like, and we can chat
just add to what you've just said. So what you've just said, the only thing that I would add is that the very pedagogy of the guitar has created that kind of situation. Because if you went to a conservatory, let's say 50 years ago, if somebody was able to play Sevilla or La Catedral, they would be called genius and they would make a career. Nowadays, any 12-year-old can do that. So you have a generous standard, I mean, an average standard that is much higher. That doesn't mean that you have the very topmost in the same numbers that you had before. I mean, you might call there's no Barenboim, but you don't have a new Julian Bring or whatever. No. So I think it has to do with the moment and the kind of musical experience they go through. But we cannot deny that you have much more people playing at a very high level nowadays. That is, to me, in pure numbers, very evident. So,
yeah. As an average, like my statement is kind of this. Before, it was kind of like if you have like a density curve, it kind of looked like this. Like you had a Julian Bream and Williams, but the overall average was much lower. And I think there's enough recordings to kind of validate that statement. And now the average is higher, but you have less peaks, right? So I don't know if I mean, that's debatable, right? But I don't know. Do you agree with that, Judicael?
The thing is, when it's very basic. If you are a young guitarist, let's say 15, 16, and you want to listen pieces played by others, you have a very limited number of reference of the past. And there is this, I mean, it's a huge help if you have a lot of people who reach a certain level to reach yourself a higher level. I mean, it's totally, there is a psychological aspect, there is also a learning aspect. So can you imagine if you play any kind of concerto for piano, sonata, whatever, you have tons of very good version. You have no doubt this is good. You can prefer one more than the other. And on the guitar, it's very difficult. I mean, I am going to say on purpose, Fabio, because you record the Villa-Lobos. But if you want to have the 12 studies by Villa-Lobos, there's not so many versions. I mean, there is yours, there is Bream, there is few of them, but you can't say that you have like 20, 30 versions that you can listen for sure and still sings because it's really good. And it's much more difficult because of that. So somehow it limits a little bit the level in comparison of the other instrument. And also, for example, I talk about my son who played the clarinet and the guitar, so to go in Geneva, in the guitar, it wasn't very easy because there were a lot of contestants. But in clarinet, there were like 100 for 2 or 3 spots. The teacher is really good, okay? But it's impossible to imagine any place with a required program on guitar who would have 30 candidates for 3 spots. It's more than the highest guitar competition. And this is just to study in bachelor in clarinet. So with this density, of course, the level has to be somehow still a bit lower to reach the highest peak because we have less people. It's just mechanical.
I mean, fascinating topic. I really appreciate you guys staying a little bit over the hour. We should do this. We should do this more often. And probably we should do this live. Like, I don't know if we coincide one day in a festival or something. We can do a live stream or something, take questions from audience, stuff like that.
It's not impossible that I spend a few months in Berlin eventually.
Let me know. I have a couch. It's right there. There we go.
Okay.
I'm kidding. No, but we'll go. It's a fantastic city for concerts. Judicael, I hope you come here and play some time. I have some ideas. We'll see if they materialize, but this is a beginning. Thank you so much, both. Let's chat soon again.
Thank you all. That's a great idea.
Take care.